Up there about a quarter of a mile I took a road up into the mountains, but I couldn't find a spot that was pretty or had great views or anything like that. So I thought, well, I'll just better keep going. It's about 5 o'clock now and I like to get into a place at 5 so I can relax and do stuff. And just literally down the road, not more than another half a mile, is this pretty little lake. If nothing else, it's just a pretty little lake out in the middle of what is actually the kind of barren eastern Oregon area. Barren except for these mountains here. Don't know what that fries basket is nailed up there for. It's not worth going kayaking, it's too small. It's probably more like a big giant stock pond. Although I see some fishing. If you look right up here, there's a fishing hook hanging from the tree. Pretty spot. Just a little view of this pretty little spot alongside the road. Up in the relatively few mountains of this Oregon area. There's my RV over there. Elderly gentleman was in fishing. Apparently got enough for dinner tonight. There's a fence here, but apparently this is somehow owned by the state. And so access to the public is given by this clever over the fence walkway. Even up here there's not much in the way of trees. Although back in the hills a ways there is, and off to the right there's a mountain just covered with them. Another sweep of this pretty little horseshoe lake. The left side has water. The right side, the longest, probably not the deepest, does not have water. Less than 4,000 foot elevation here. This is the other far end of this lake. And you can see that the water level on occasion gets higher. Recently it looks like it was another, right up to that line right there. Well, I've just come out of these mountains here. I'm just a little bit east of Prairie City, and there was a scenic overview and I thought I'd stop for it. This is a pretty part of eastern Oregon with the deep rolling hills and the mountains around. Lots of grass, looks like good grass. Kind of wonder why the Oregon Trail people kept on going west. This looks like pretty good country. And you can smell the grass or the hay or whatever this is out here. It's an absolutely gorgeous day. Nice ride through the mountains. Some of the big Oregon trees. They've cleaned out the forest in good measure, but intelligently they've left enough so that it feels like you're driving through the forest instead of a clear-cut, lumbered out area. It's a lovely day, and it epitomizes how you have to take each day as it is and enjoy it, because you'll never be able to recreate in your senses, in your mind, the sensations you had, or that I'm having just today, driving through this pretty country on a very beautiful day. Here's kind of a clever interpretive center for this beautiful vista point. Oregon Trail probably went through here. I didn't think it did, but it may have. I'm in John Day, Oregon, and there's this exquisite little church. I'm not into churches much, but this one's really quite pretty in the classic sense. It now serves, I think, as a visitor center. Absolutely gorgeous day, as I've already indicated. Now that's a bell tower. How nifty. This is just a little bit of footage outside of John Day, just for the fun of it. Lovely day, about 77 degrees. One part of America. Small town of Dayville. Probably a town that I passed through. Can't remember it. Almost 41, 42 years ago. I'm facing east right now. I'm going to rotate and pan slowly to the north. We're now at the John Day Fossil Beds National Monument, and there are a great number of geological features here. Straight ahead, of course, is that mountain. I don't know much about that. I haven't seen anything about it here, but what you do see as you go up through Picture Gorge, that area right there, are the basalt flows from what I think was a subduction zone in this area, or at least a hot spot that had the similar dynamic. And it may be, as it suggests in the interpretive center here, the same hot spot that's now under Yellowstone. And that was 16 million years ago that those flows that are curved right now and angled downward were once flat, horizontal, as they had flowed across the flat of the land when the earth erupted. And as I pan around slowly, we'll be able to see more of that. We're now traveling down the side of an old volcano, or at least some kind of a volcanic eruption of some sort. Duh. I've just hiked down along that edge of this old volcano en route to the tree molds. Okay, we're now at the tree mold area, but before we go down to look at those, this gives a good idea of the kind of topography a person would have to traverse if they wanted to go in a straight line from one side to the one other side of this lava. Somewhere between here and those mountains, of course, normal, smooth rolling topography returns, but this is what it would be, and we'll get closer up a little bit further on. But right now, let's go down and look at the tree molds. These are tree molds. There are at least 3 of them here, maybe a couple more somewhere. And they're formed when the lava flows around the tree. Then the moisture from the tree being precipitated by or vaporized, if you will, by the heat of the lava. The vapor that's in the trees then cools that lava quickly, forming this concavity. But then the tree, partially burned, remains, and then eventually, over 1,000 whatever years, erodes and weathers and rots away. All around me is this twisting and turning, smooth, rope-like movements, or evidence of the movements of the lava. So it looked like it would have flowed downhill, perhaps, from one of these directions, maybe several over time, and just encased these 3 trees that were here. But looking at the size of those trees, this might have been quite a good-sized forest. Approaching an area now that just kind of looks curious to me, because I think it's got some significant elevations, like places where the rivers of lava did not penetrate so thoroughly. Here, perfect example of that bunching up of material as it does something, flows downhill or uphill. I'm not sure what the dynamic is. It could have been, this is certainly going downhill. Maybe what happens is as it flows downhill, it backs up against the lava in front of it and creates those concave rings, if you will. Certainly it can be from places like this that give you the impression of craters and the impression of the moon surface. Now here's some excellent examples of the tree molds. The tree had either fallen beforehand or was pushed down by the lava, and you can actually see the imprints of branches that went off to the side, those 2 holes there. You can see the bark indentations, and you can see that this might have been a tree with several branches that we're seeing here. And it's a fairly significant sized tree, about the size of the other one perhaps, if that curve is any indicator. Here, not too far away from it, more of the long line, just a little bit of bark indentation remaining from the weathering, and otherwise it's all been filled in. The upper part's been broken through over time. It might have been just a thin covering, and then when the tree itself rotted out over time, there was no support. It's always fascinating to me when you're here in a place like this and you're looking at something like this that may be 1,000, 2,000 years of age, to wonder, were there men here at that time? Men meaning humans? What did they think of this kind of event? What did they think of these tree molds? Did they know of their existence? And how high would these trees have been at the level? Now we're seeing these here. Was this the level of the ground? Presumably so, or at least it was the level of the top of the lava flow. But could the trees go deeper, much, much deeper than what we're seeing here, based on the elevation drop right over there? Were I younger, one of the neat challenges would be to get permission to traverse this as a backpacker. Now this particular tree mold sits at its top roughly about 6 feet below the grade that I'm on, and then it goes down another 2 feet. Could one go down and excavate that out deeper and deeper and deeper? What kind of intrigues me is looking way up there on top of that hill in the distance, which is all eroded and smoothed off. If that was once a volcanic hill, and then material just kind of cascaded down and formed these lower hills, which are now covered with vegetation and now are basically eroded down except for a few outcroppings. And yet when we get down here, we find what almost looks like pristine lava flow. Why is this not eroded out? Why did the upper part not look like this? Is it the fact that this came down and flowed across the land horizontally, whereas on the hills there's been not only the downward flow, which would tend to smooth and take with it anything that was loose, but then the erosion capacity of, or capability of, gravity-driven water and debris off those hills might have smoothed those, whereas that's not happening here. I don't know. Now this area that I'm standing next to now was an entire lava tube, if you will. You can see what height it was at, and you can see along the edges there where it broke off and fell down into the rather shallow, flat lava tube. And the same thing is here. You can just see the broken and buckling chunks of rock. But you can also see cracks through here that may reflect that whole big chunks of this fell in on itself. You can just imagine this slowly flowing like molasses. Probably, I'm guessing now as I look at it more, the front waves, the back waves starting to pile up behind the front waves as the front waves encounter obstructions or whatever. Notice the metallic blue color. Here's another hole that to me looks very much like a tree hole, a mold, particularly if the tree were either slanted or it was near its base where it was curving up a bit. unmarked, but I suspect that's what it is. I always like to walk with the camera on. Your eyes, of course, adjust to the up and down movement of your body, and the camera doesn't, but gives people a little sense, gives me a little sense of what it was like to walk along the trail. And these, what look like sandstone or something like that type of rocks below us, are below, as you can see, the thick crust of the basalt layer on top. And it was in much earlier times that the live creatures and plants were buried underneath all of the landfill that we see now. I wonder if those trails right there are the trails of animals or of humans. To a geologist, I would guess that this view that we're seeing as I pan is a beautiful story of geological time and evolution and events. But to the majority of us, it's just a beautiful place because of the curiosity of what must be inherent in the story here that we really can't understand for lack of education. Just reading further, these light-colored hills below us, including the one I think we're standing on, 12 to 15 million years ago, there was a forested area all throughout this area, and then it started, the weather changed, and it became a savanna, and a flat savannas as you would see in Africa. But here, interestingly enough, we also had at that time the huge elephants on this planet, on this continent, camels, horses, antelopes, and then the carnivourouses, apparently huge bear dogs, whatever those are. It's the first time I've heard that term. Cat-like saber-tooths, and dogs who hunted the ungulates that were on this savanna, and the dwindling number of forest-dwelling animals that were also. Successive ash falls have buried the remnants of those animals, and that's what makes this the fossil beds. Duh. A little bit closer look at Picture Gorge, and it's suggested in here that this is a fault in the basaltic layers that were horizontal, and that some cataclysmic force caused them to bend downward, i.e. to warp from their horizontal position. And then they were covered also with several hundred feet, I guess it was, of overburden material. Well, I guess the road goes up through the gorge. I pass through many of these things on my travels, but don't often have a explanation for why they're what they are and what the significance of what they are is. To the Thomas Condon Visitor Center. That guy have to deal with some poor jokes. And there's that mountain we were looking at with whatever that light-colored area. That light-colored area may just be the deposits of airborne volcanic dust. And that area either got lifted up relative to the rest or has stayed about the same as that top plateau and been weathered around it. That may be the case. But just looking at the layers here, one can only imagine what kind of fossil beds are here and what kind of fossils are exposed from time to time. This is looking back east towards the road that 26 that goes on to Prineville. But I think I have been up through here a few years ago, and I think to my left, to the west, is the old ranch that Bill Scott was somehow connected to. It's a historical site now. It's interesting, they said that this in front of us represents about 1/10 of the depth of all fossil-bearing layers in the entire John Day fossil beds, which range back at least 65 million years. What an exciting thing for geologists. The museum is laid out in sections. We've just looked at the 40 million years ago, 35 million years ago, and here are the 29 million, 24, and 20 million year ago layers, if you will, time frames that $24 million years ago, large deposits of soft ash promoted the burrowing animals. But then 20 million years ago, the emergence of a new type of plant eater, the open plains grazer. $15 million years ago. These look like teeth, yeah. And some kind of egg. The John Day fossil bed records of ancient life ends with pebbles, boulders, and sand intermingled with deep soils and a thick welded tuff. Very much like the rock that was up at the interpretive center. These are examples of prehistoric wood that has been found. And with these they can examine the cellular configuration and structure of wood. These are from the charno nut beds, which are unique because branches, leaves, nuts, seeds are all found together in association, which is a connection. It's kind of like a Rosetta Stone for timing different kind of fauna. It's interesting to see how some fossils are found in situ. In other words, if I'm using the word or term right, where the major parts of the bones are all right together. This video right now is for Bill Scott, Daphne's dad, because this is the Cant Ranch, where apparently Bill had some connection, I don't recall what it was now, with this Cant Ranch and that big home there, which is also part of the monument and a National Heritage Site, and is now a museum for apparently human cultural history as opposed to the geology of the new visitor center. But I thought Bill might enjoy this. This is the new center here. Splendid building. When you try to talk about teaching or education of young people, the only thing they can think of is what I'm going to tell them instead of how they are going to learn.